factors to develop epistemological basis. Likewise, no imposed structure, creative subjectivity, different forms of text. So this is one of the ways of doing autoethnography. It's not just you write in a conventional scientific manner. That's also a possibility, but there are many multiple ways of representing our experience, our lived experiences. So this is what postmodernism contributes to autoethnographic project. Likewise, when we talk about autoethnography, it is not just about critique or critical analysis, it is also about envisioning. When we say envisioning refers to a post-formal mode of thinking, in that we sort of not just stuck in formal rational reasoning, but also look beyond the formal rational kind of analysis. We try to see what is possible, what can be possible, what can we do about this situation. So it actually brings transformative thinking at the core. What is my role within this hierarchical structure? What is my role within this, culturally decontextualized maths education, science education, or STEAM education? So this focuses more, this draws from wisdom, from integral ontology, meaning that it's not ontology of dualism. It's both. It's both realism and idealism. Both can be brought together. Likewise, in dialectical thinking, it's not just either or. It's not either this or that. It is more. It is both. It is blending both. So it is more of envisioning. Likewise, when we talk about autoethnography is also a genre. Students might do fieldwork, in ethnographic fieldwork, and they may write autoethnography of their experience of fieldwork. They may do fieldwork. They may do their fieldwork as participatory action researcher, and they may write autoethnography. They use autoethnography as genre. So when we say autoethnography genre, it allows researchers to make a representation of different subjective layers through textual construction. They may create stories, they may create dialogues based on their experiences. And they may also create evocative emotional text when they feel something in a particular way. For example, if they observe corporal punishment in school, or they observe hierarchy, or they observe submissiveness, or they observe business as usual attitude in schools, then they write some form of evocative text. Likewise, they may also use story, narrative, performance, and other transgressive text. What I mean by transgressive is the text which are beyond the standard. And the purpose of autoethnography is to write for readership, not just for the publication, scientific journal, or just other purposes, not other academic purposes. So as a genre, autoethnography is about bringing intimate personal narratives, in a particular context. When we say genre, then then we have different forms of representation, and it's not just literary genre here. It's why we need autoethnography. We need autoethnography to question our own subjectivity. We generate perspectival text rather than more dogmatic propositional text. Likewise, when we we use autoethnography as genre, we become more conscious of the present moment. What the researcher is thinking, he or she has to be conscious. And also socio-political interactivity. It's not just autobiographical narcissistic text. We also interact with the context, with the political context, with the personal context, with the social, cultural context. Similarly, disclosing researchers' background is also very important. In many qualitative research handbooks, this is called vulnerability. We become vulnerable so that other people know about ourselves. So there is a risk involved in it as well. but we need to actually become uh, open to make ourselves available for others in terms of our backgrounds. Similarly, dialogic. So it doesn't provide all solutions. It raises questions. So authors start interacting with the text. Okay? So, and very important part, as I said in my earlier slides as well, it's being aware of our own limitations and possibilities. That is called critical reflexivity. Likewise, autoethnography is methodology, is a well-established methodology. I have also supervised around 30 plus master's, MPhil, and PhD thesis under this methodology. So when we say methodology, then we need to actually look into the epistemology, ontology, axiology, so on and so forth. So one of the epistemologies is constructionist views of knowing. That's what I've been using. Constructionism doesn't actually downplay objective and subjective. It blends both. Of course, subjectivity is very important here, but it's not necessary to downplay or downgrade objectivity as well. And knowledge is largely contextual, soulful, and intangible. And it's we because as a method, as an epistemology, when we say constructionist view of knowing, we focus more on embodied knowing and also performative knowing. That knowing is not just is passive reproduction of text, a reproduction of evidences, or a juxtaposition of evidences, but it is more of active meaning making process. So thanks to constructionist epistemology. Likewise, when we talk about ontology, we talk about multiple realism. Of course, we consider naive realism as well, but we move beyond naive realism. We move further than naive realism. We embrace socio-historical realism. We also consider experiential realism, and we also consider somehow, semi-effective realism as well. Dreams and intuitions, they are very, very important. So, as opposed to, so one of the focus of these ontology is nominalism, that and also subjectivities, and we also consider ontology of change. Ontology is not fixated; it's not essentialist ontology, and we consider language and reality as interconnected. They are interactive. Okay? Language, a particular form of language, is used to represent a particular form of reality. So there is a very important role of language. Language is not separate from reality. Reality is constitutive in the way we communicate. Autoethnography is in terms of axiology. So one of the major goals of autoethnographic researcher is to look into their personal political agenda. For example, if somebody is interested in looking into the practice of student-centered learning or active learning, then that becomes personal as well, and also political, because it contributes to system change. Personal, he or she would like to do good inside the classroom. He or she would like to improve his or her classroom practice. So, likewise, ethics of body versus mind politics. So it's not like the Cartesian dualism is very important here to consider. In not just what I mean by this is that the Cartesian dualism is something very important to consider, because it actually it gave rise to the idea of body versus mind politics. Here, body refers to the refers to the metaphor of practice, and mind refers to the metaphor of theory. Actually, this is very problematic for us as autoethnographic researcher. There is no separation between body and mind. They are interconnected. Of course, there may be some differences between theory and practice, but these differences are not permanent. The body-mind differences. And likewise, as I said earlier, researchers' vulnerability is very important. Who we are and what we are up to. And another very important part is valuing the personal practical knowledge of researcher, because this is the hallmark. It's not, enlightenment rationality, that is modernist rationality that autoethnography promotes. It, of course, it does, but more than that, that's personal practical knowledge is very, very important in the context of using individual researchers' experience, lived experiences. And another very important goal of autoethnography is research for all. It's not research for a select few, but research for all. So when we talk about autoethnography as methodology, we also need to think about representation, how we represent what we know. There are many ways. One of the ways is to allow us to be, use diachronic approach rather than synchronic one. In diachronic approach, we demonstrate how we grow over the period of time as we start our research. Similarly, the focus, sometimes we go through narrative or sometimes we go through thematic. It's more of blend of these two. And similarly, emergent structure, we come up with emergent structure that our structure may not follow the conventional so-called positivistic research structure, thesis structure. The 5-chapter plan may not work, may be a possibility. That's also okay, but that may not be a possibility. Or researcher would like to do more creative kind of work. So research. So how does this autoethnography is conceived then? For example, if we see these different research paradigms, I have abbreviated them as PVSM, positivism, and similarly interpretivism, criticalism, postmodernism, and integralism. Actually, when we say positivism, one of the aspects of positivism is to describe, and interpretivism is to make meaning in context, and criticalism is to question, is to contest. Similarly, postmodernism is to celebrate subjectivity through multiple logics and genres, and integralism is to bring is to use post-formal, more ecological perspective, which is very much essential in envisioning. Actually, many people tend to think that these are separate paradigms and we are using separate paradigms. Actually, it's a coherent whole that we use different aspects of paradigm in this design. So we call it a multi-paradigmatic kind of approach. So this is the research design that we use. So when we talk about a kind of design, then how do you do autoethnographic research? How can you actually conceive an autoethnographic inquiry? Actually, of course we need to write a proposal, we need to have something in the beginning, but we rely very much on emergent design. We see a proposal written in a form of emergent design, or we need that kind of perspective. Like I have a proposal and I will do research in one go, or these are my research questions and I won't change it. So this is it. So this type of proposal won't be very, very helpful in autoethnographic research. So here, structure and chapters evolve during the process. And research questions, they can be very much associated with personal political, personal culture, and personal collective in nature. Sometimes we think about, improving our own practice. But improving our own practice is not just, our one agenda. Of course, there is personal dimension very much associated with it. But it is also political because there are so many power relationships, power structures embedded in our practice. Similarly, second is personal and cultural, because cultural is not just, the question is not just individual, it's cultural, it's the community there. It's a communal kind of group. For example, if you talk about a school, then it's a cultural whole. There are people, they have beliefs, values, perspectives. They might be similar to yourself, but they might also be different in many ways. Similarly, personal and collective. It's not just yourself. There is a collective, there may be community of practice, and then they like or they may not like, or you may challenge them. So it's this dimension, that you should have come up with more of non-realist research agenda. Now, you are not necessarily looking into achievement level. You are not necessarily looking into a very simple, basic kind of questions like, how can this be, this factor contribute to, a kind of thing. It's more of non-realist. It's beyond realism. It's more political. It's more personal, as I said earlier. So in this way, this is more non-realist research question that we consider. When we talk about method, from methodology in terms of hierarchy, we talk about design, and then we go to research method. Then we actually think of writing as inquiry. So narrative, that means we write. One of the basic method of autoethnographic research is to writing as inquiry. Of course, there may be many methods, ethnographic methods involved in this one. For example, you go to the field, you talk to people, you observe them. That can also be involved. But basically, what is important to consider as research method in autoethnographic inquiry is writing as inquiry, as Laurel Richardson puts it. Writing narrative construction based on nodal moments. Nodal means key moments. You might have experienced something new one day, 1 week, something has happened. One particular week, something has happened. So these might be nodal moments depending upon your focus. And it's similarly layered interpretations. Interpretation not just as a researcher, not just your vantage point. Maybe there are other vantage points. Similarly, so we have used this term called data text, and this is very oxymoronic though, because data refers to something called, mathematical in numeric sense, and text is something, number also are text. That's why we use this word data text. And we also use many arts-based approaches like writing autoethnographic text as drama, writing autoethnographic text as novel. So there might be many arts-based approaches as well. So you may raise this question then, can fieldwork and autoethnography go together? Definitely it can go, So you need a lens you need to focus on, and you need to zoom a particular phenomenon or particular event. So different types of tales. Max Van Manen talks about, John Van Manen talks about realist, confessional, and impressionist tales. And also sometimes we consider semi-fictive writing is for several reasons, because sometimes we do not like to disclose the participants. Maybe the issue is very, very poignant, maybe very critical one. If the participant is exposed or the event is exposed in some way or the other, the participant can be harmed or might be harmed. So in that case, we use semi-fictive writing. And we also consider many literary approaches as well. So how can we get the data then? So many people, ask these questions, even in research committee, meeting, in PhD presentation, MPhil presentation, master's students presentation, they ask this question. So, so the idea here is not to just collect data, but to generate data. And actually, in many non-positivistic paradigms, for example, in ethnography, in phenomenology, the idea of data generation is very, very important. And the other thing is to map critical moments. Sometimes you need to confirm, you need to ask people for verisimilitude, whether this sounds true. Similarly, professional experience. And you also construct memory. For example, you might have forgotten what happened in your teen. Now you are 50 years old or 30 years old, you don't know exactly the event. Now you map it, you construct memory, you talk to people, You talk to your head teacher, or you talk to your teacher, you talk to your family member, and look at the history, look at the timeline, national timeline, global timeline, what happened at that time. So then you can construct your own memory. Experience is a particular phenomenon, and your particular moment. You might have written diaries, reflective accounts, and but it is very important, in this type of inquiry, in transformative critical autoethnographic inquiry, you cannot actually separate data from not data. It's very, very difficult. So what is the role of theories? So interactivity of research and theory is not just theory being imposed here, because the purpose here is to generate praxis, not a practice, but praxis. Then we put the emphasis of interactivity of the researcher and theory. So theories are used for insights, not the objective philosophy, not as the objective philosophical claims. Likewise, the emphasis is on the primacy of lived experience rather than the theoretical statements. So how that can be summarized is this, critical reflexive relationship between researcher and theories. So the relationship between theories and researcher is not like taken for granted. Okay, the theory says this and I'll follow this. It's not like that. It's critical reflexive. So we also question the theories as well. This is largely subjectivity is there. As I said earlier, the emphasis emphasis of autoethnography is critical project. Is the emphasis is to transform something, is to change something. So the emphasis is always praxis oriented. So praxis oriented knowledge through ethnographic moments and autobiographic impulses. And similarly, the knowledge claim would be embodied, contextual, gender, other, local knowledge. So it's more of the narrative presentation. The autoethnographic dissertation or thesis itself is the findings of this study rather than a statement. Fusion of heart and mind, both evocative and analytic, both kind of text are there. There might be a story of a classroom. There might be a story of a very best classroom. There might be a story of so-called worst classroom. So these can both be the findings in a way. They can be connected with the larger socio-political context or larger socio-educational context. How can we judge the quality then? The quality of validity, reliability, and objectivity cannot actually judge the quality of autoethnography. There may be some that kind of autoethnography, I don't know thus far, but for me, possible standards are something like that, very similitude, whether it sounds true or not. We don't know, I mean, it's very hard to match to see the one-to-one correspondence between the truth and the data and truth. It's in each and every research. It's not just this type of research. So instead of validity, we say verisimilitude. Likewise, instead of replicability, talk about transferability. Not the entirety of the research is presented. Is replicated, but some aspects of it is helpful to shift to other contexts. So likewise, whether the text generate pedagogical thoughtfulness among the readers, likewise whether it allows researcher to be critically aware of his or her own practice, and whether it focuses, it comes with some educational perspective that can be also called that can be assessed through the quality of crystallization. So in this way, in this presentation, I have actually tried to clarify some of the concepts associated with autoethnography. Thank you very much.